It's Christmas week already. There aren't that many stories from Korea that are directly linked to Christmas. It's not exactly our tradition after all. So, for this last episode of 2024, I collected the stories of midwinter, of snow, chilling cold, and pale icy fog. But apart from one story, the rest depict certain warmth and humanity that seem to glow even warmer in the winter cold. So, here are 4 allegedly true stories of spooky but touching encounters in winter days. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by host, Anthony. In the summer of my 19th year, still fresh in the university, I fell hard in love with a girl. It was my first serious love. It might have been immature, but earnest and pure on my part. Sadly, she wasn't. I did all I could do for her and let my life evolve around her, but she just chewed me as much as she pleased and spat out when she got bored with me. My desperate romance barely lasted 6 months. By the following January, I was a lost soul with a broken heart. To live another day was an agony. To drown it all, I filled my lung with a copious amount of smoke and my brain with alcohol. My first trench coat, which I bought at the beginning of autumn to show off to my girl, by then got dirty, with its sleeves stiff, having wiped out so much of my tears. I didn't dare to go back home. I didn't want to show the broken me to my parents. For the first few days, I stayed in the empty rooms in the uni, but as they started refurbishment during the winter break, I couldn't stay there anymore. I stayed with the friends for a few days, but I got tired of their half-hearted sympathy, and one day just came out and wandered around. Heavy snowfall seemed to be fitting to my miserable state. When I came across a small shell of a building still under construction, I sneaked in, probably to take shelter from the winter gusts, or probably just hide away from eyes of other people. I went up to the 3rd floor and emptied a bottle I was carrying. Could I just end it all? My mind was repeating that question. My eyes caught the exposed water pipe across the ceiling. I stepped on an empty paint can and tossed my belt over the pipe. I don't think I was really meaning to do it, but the idea felt so enticing. What would it be like? Would it take long? Would it be very painful? It should hurt my parents a lot. With a belt still around my neck and my mind noisy with all sorts of thoughts, I lighted a cigarette. Then, somehow, my eyes looked down the street outside through the window, or more hole on the wall because it was not yet fitted with window frames. There was a lamp post, and underneath, in the spot of the light, was a woman. She was white. Her hair, face, clothes, all white. Next to the bags of garbage and spent coal piled under the lamppost, she looked like an unexpected blossom that flowered in a mud pit. There definitely was a significant distance between us, but somehow her face looked so clear to me, as if she was looking at me from right in front of me. To my mind, her sad, enigmatic smile was telling me clearly,
"Don't do it. Don't."
Then I thought, The white face looked somehow familiar. Where did I see her before? I jumped down from the paint can and ran down to the street. But under the lamp was the white woman no more. There wasn't even any footprints on the snow that covered all around. About 3 years passed. By then I finished the military service, and the pang of the broken heart was also dulled down, if not completely healed over. One evening, I was watching TV with my mom. There was a report about a rare genetic syndrome called albinism, that the body doesn't produce any pigment. They interviewed an albino, and she was indeed all white, the hair, face, everything. She reminds me of poor Young-suk, Mom said. Who is Young-suk? I said. Young-suk was our neighbor when I was about 2 years old. She was about 30, and at the time she would have been already considered an old maiden. But she couldn't get married because she was an albino, with white hair and white face. I forgot it all, but apparently Young-suk adored little me. Wouldn't I love to have such a cute child of my own? She would say every time she saw me. She did manage to get herself a boyfriend and gave him her all. But her man only used and robbed her of all she had and dumped her. One cold winter day, she was found hung at her place, using her belt. I felt as if my head was hit hard when Mom recounted this story. I didn't remember Young-suk, but somehow I knew it was her that I saw in that cold winter day. It was her who stopped me from committing something foolish. How I wish she appears to me one more time, so that I could thank her. One winter, I and 2 friends gathered together to go to a ski resort. We all 3 were busy working guys and could barely afford this weekend trip, but we were determined to make the most of the little time we had. We set off as soon as the work was done on Friday evening. It was already night by the time we arrived at the resort, but that wouldn't stop us from go out and skiing. As we unpacked in our room, we heard some girls chattering and laughing from the next door. Shall we try our luck and invite the girls to join us? One friend suggested, and I, the boldest of us 3, went to knock on their door. The girl who opened the door was pretty and very tall. I'm not particularly tall, about 175 centimeters, that would be about 5'8", but she was tall enough for me to look up. She said she and her 3 friends also just arrived and welcomed our invitation. So we 7, us 3 boys and them 4 girls, hopped on our car and drove off to the ski slope. The girls said they were students of ballet. Probably that explains their height. For some reason, they insisted to go to the last ski slope. That would be the oldest and the most remote one in the resort. Girls explained it should be the quietest one. They knew it well because they were regulars to the resort. Anyway, we didn't want to be on the wrong side with them from the start and drove to the last slope as they demanded. As soon as the car stopped, the girls got off and jumped around on the snow and exclaimed excitedly. I just laughed and was about to follow the rest out. "Stop! Don't get out!" the friend who drove abruptly said. He sounded tense. It was so different from his usual carefree self that I got an instant chill. Fetch Charles back discreetly so that the girls don't notice, he said. I didn't know what was going on, but couldn't dismiss his desperate tone. As soon as I took Charles back to the car, he started the car on full speed even before we could close the door. The girls darted towards us, seeing us leaving them behind, but they couldn't catch up with the car on full speed. We all shouted impatiently, what was going on, was he gone mad, etc. But the driving friend said sharply, "Shut the F up, I'm not myself right now. Just let me focus on driving." Seeing his hands holding the wheel shaking, we had to just shut up. Only when we got back in the room, he finally explained. "When the girls jumped around at the slope, didn't you notice? They didn't leave footprints on the snow. What was stranger was that they were jumping around on toes. En point, as they say in ballet. Okay, they said they learned ballet, but who does that on snow?" Only then I realized why the girl was so tall when she opened the door to me earlier. Because she was standing on her toe. In the morning, we checked at the front desk if our next room was occupied, if so, by whom. But the staff said there should be nobody in that room. It was further later that I found out 4 young female students were found frozen to death at that last slope of the ski resort a few years ago. It was considered a mystery then because even at night it was not very difficult to find a way around in that popular resort. Could they have been the girls we met? Who can tell for sure? It's from many years ago. It was a freezing cold day with heavy snow. I clearly remember news reporting on record-breaking cold. And that evening was the end of the year party for my book club. If you're a Korean, you should know that you don't let mere weather stop you from doing something. So I went to the party. Fortunately, it wasn't too far, about 20 minutes away by bus or 40 minutes on foot. At the party, I found a new face, a friend of one of the club members, I heard. I tried to chat her up, but she hardly replied, so I just shrugged and let her be. After a few hours of drinks and fun, I realized it was passing midnight already. I didn't want to miss the last bus home and hurriedly left. And found myself alone with that strange woman in the elevator. I tend to feel awkward in such a situation, so I made an effort to chat her up again. "Are you going home now?" "Yes," she said. "Me too. I'm taking a bus, and you?" "My mom is coming to pick me up." Indeed, outside the building was a car. The window rolled down, and a middle-aged woman on the passenger seat waved to the woman. That should be the mother, I thought. I quickly bade goodnight to the woman and hurried myself towards the bus stop myself. I heard a car horn, and the car stopped by my side. Oh, were they going to give me a lift? Hooray! The window rolled down, and the middle-aged woman asked, "Are you on your way home?" "Yes, I am." "Excuse me, but could you get some hot coffee for us? 3 cups, that is." For a moment, I wasn't sure if I understood her correctly. Asking a total stranger to do such a thing? She must have picked up my confusion and quickly added, Dear, it's because it's so cold." Well, you were sitting inside a warm car. I was the one standing in the cold. What the heck was she on about? It's so late. I don't think any coffee bar is opened, I said. but the woman pointed a 24/7 convenience store down the road. "That would do. I would have asked my daughter, but it would be too difficult for her to carry 3 cups by herself," the middle-aged woman said. And as if by the cue, her daughter got off the car and led me to the convenience store. I worried about missing my bus, but I calculated I should still have enough time and went to the shop. But my calculation didn't foresee how busy the store was. Probably because it was a freezing cold night, there were a lot of customers getting themselves hot drinks, cup noodles, or simply warm themselves up inside. It literally took 10 minutes before I could just order for 3 coffees. "I'm really sorry, but I must catch the last bus. Can't you just ask your mom to help?" I said to the woman. "But my mom can't walk. She's disabled," she said. Well, what could I say to that? By the time we got out of the shop, 15 minutes had passed, and I knew I missed my bus already. Well, 40 minutes walk in this bloody cold then. "Thank you." The middle-aged woman took the coffee from me with a bright smile. As I turned around to go, she said, "Walk slowly. It's very slippery with snow. Go slow, so that you can have a long life." She sounded somehow very theatrical. I grumbled about the mad people and carried on towards home. It was freaking cold, but I was too poor to get a cab. About 10 minutes into the journey, I got a call from a relative.
"Hey, what do you do?"
"In town. I had a party at my book club. Missed the last bus, so walking home now."
"What? In this cold? Just come over here."
Well, that was actually a good idea. The relative lived by himself in town. In the end, I turned around and crushed at his. I didn't forget to grumble about the weird woman and her mad mother before bed either. Following day, I went home and found a police line all around it. Turned out my upstairs neighbor got burgled and stabbed to death. I calculated the timing and realized the break-in murder happened about the time when I would have arrived home had I not missed the last bus. If I had either rejected a coffee errand or chose to get a taxi home, then it would have been possible that I ran into the murderer myself. Next time I attended the book club, I asked others about the strange woman. She's not coming back?"
She's just a friend of mine. Guess I failed to seduce her to the club,"
one member said. "I see. Well, I met her mother too that night."
"Ah, did you? Her mother is a shaman, you know."
"Really? She didn't look like a shaman."
How can you tell if one is just by looking at her? She's pretty famous, though she sadly can't walk."
I'm not religious and skeptical about the whole shamanism thing. I always thought it was just a con. I'm still skeptical, but can't help but wondering if she really foresaw the potential danger waiting back at my home. "Walk slowly," she said, "so that I could have a long life." On the New Year's Day of 1994, I just turned 20. With the last year of high school and SAT behind, I wanted to kickstart my 20s with something special. So, on the last day of 1993, I headed to Gyeongpo Beach on the East Coast to see the first sunrise of the new year, and then headed to Ode Mountain. I must say I felt very proud of myself and felt like some lone hero of an epic film. Weather was on my side. It wasn't too cold and didn't snow. It was already 2 in the afternoon by the time I reached the beginning of the trail, but young and confident in my own strength, I thought I should be able to make it to the camping ground before the sun should set if I hurried. It was a quiet hiking. I ran into a few fellow hikers only when I reached the high point of the trail. A cup of hot coffee a kindly lady offered me boosted my energy, and I decided to go further up rather than directly head to the camping ground that I initially aimed for. I just thought I should meet other hikers there again too and follow them down the route. But I was wrong. The dusk set quickly in the mountain just past 5, and I saw not a soul all the way on the trail. I frankly started feeling overwhelmed, but I hurried my walk. So long I stayed on the trail, it should be fine, I thought. By 6, it got completely dark. I was still on the trail, but I was more and more unsure that I had to check on the map time after time. The point I wanted to reach was nowhere near in the sight. Guided by the feeble flashlight, I walked another 3 hours. Frantic steps got heavy with exhaustion, and panic turned to despair. I couldn't deny it anymore. I was lost. For 5 hours, I constantly walked with no food or water apart from the cup of coffee. I must have been clenching my jaw so hard with the tension the whole time that I could hardly open my mouth even if I wanted. I dropped on the spot and sobbed, feeling even more panic that I, a grown-up ass man, was now helplessly sobbing on the ground. But I couldn't possibly spend the night there. If I at least reached the top, I should be able to reorientate my direction, I thought. So I stood up and walked further. However, before I knew it, I was completely out of the trail. I found my feet swimming across the pile of fallen leaves and myself trying to climb up steep rocky slopes that was clearly not a way. I was deeply shocked. I didn't know how one can lose all the sense in a state of panic. Time was now passing midnight. I was so exhausted that even breathing felt like a labor. I finally concluded to stop and wait till the dawn broke. I found a spot with a high pile of fallen leaves and opened my sleeping bag underneath them. It wasn't too cold, but the deep silence and sense of isolation was terrifying. I played my Walkman on speaker to chase it away, and fell asleep.
Oi! Oi!
What woke me up was a bright light and a voice. I must have fallen deep in a sleep, and it took a moment to realize the situation.
What the heck are you doing here? You'll freeze to death. Are you all alone?
The voice said. I'm sorry, thank you. Where am I? I stood up and said. It was still dark all around, and when the flashlight that was blinding me was lowered, I saw it was a 30-something-year-old man.
You look like a young student. You should know it's deadly to sleep out here, he said.
I think I'm lost. I got so scared and tired, so...
Huh? It's the music that saved you. I first thought it might be a ghost or something when I heard music ringing out of nowhere here. But it led to you. Looks like you're not even familiar with the route. Anyway, come, follow me. I picked up my sleeping bag and hurriedly joined him. Time was about 3 in the morning, and snow started just falling. Thank you, sir. You saved my life, I said. But the guy just walked on with no reply.
So I just shut my mouth up and followed him on for a good 20-30 minutes. I suddenly felt dizzy. Sorry, but I feel a bit funny, I said, and shook my head to regain the focus of my sight. And the next moment, the man in front of me was there no more, who was walking just a few steps ahead of me a second ago. Every cell of my body felt like quivering with a shock. I couldn't understand what just happened. Was he a ghost? Or was I gone mad? All the strength washed out of my body, and I felt like fainting. But I shook myself up and looked round. Wet snow was flying all around, and I could hardly see anything. But, oh, I saw something. A signpost. I was back on a trail. I took out my map and realized I had well passed my initial destination and was closer to the next peak. It was such a relief to figure out where I was again. I was so scared to lose the way again that I decided to wait till dawn by the signpost. At one corner of my mind, I think I hoped the strange guy might reappear again too and confirm everything was normal and as it should be. But as I calmed down, I realized a few things I missed earlier. He said the music from my Walkman led him to me. The music had already stopped by the time he woke me up. The cassette tape was barely half an hour long from start to finish, so it would have automatically stopped, hours before he found me. It should be impossible. He had just stared at me for 2 hours between when he found me and woke me up, shouldn't it? What was it then that he heard that guided him to me? Or was he really a ghost? My mind was so busy speculating that I forgot hunger and exhaustion. Thankfully, the dawn finally came. It was still foggy, but snow stopped, and I could find my way down. Later I learned the section I lost my way is considered a tough route with a lot of rocky terrain and unexpected cliffs. Indeed, there have been another small number of fatalities from fall or being lost in downpour or snow. I'm still not sure who the man was, and if he indeed was a ghost. But whatever the case, there's no denying I owe my life to him. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Life is hard, and the world seems to be going mad. But if there should be one soul, dead or alive, that is compassionate enough to offer a hand in the time of our desperate need, isn't life still worth living? 2024 was a year of struggle, personally. I got through basically dealing one task of the moment at a time. We and our life are such a fragile thing, and just a few things going wrong can fundamentally unravel. But I should be thankful that all my beloved people are still here, and there's a roof over my head. Yet. Let us pray something more hopeful for the new year. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, the link's in the description, and there's also a Super Thanks option here on YouTube for a small donation. Thank you. I'm giving myself a week off for Christmas and the New Year, and I'm going to return for the first Sunday of 2025. My dear viewers, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and lots of good fortunes for the new year.